The old adage that 90% of the fish are in 10% of the water goes to extremes in winter. It's more like 98% of the fish in 1/10 of 1% of the water once the water dips into the 30s. So how do we locate those spots? You can pound all of it until you stumble upon them. Or you can look at it from the fish's perspective of their biggest challenge in winter, a cold, icy flood with trees and trailer homes churning down the river at highway speeds. They go to places where they can survive the ice-out flood. Dial into these winter pools with regular trips to the same water as the water chills down in the fall. Here's the process. All right, Juan's here. We're going to do a float here on November 17th. What's up, man?
Not too much, buddy. Ready to do some fishing?
Yeah. Let us know what the plan is for the day. What we're trying to accomplish today.
Basically, what we're going to do today is really just try to locate some wintering areas. We've had some areas where the fish have been kind of spread out throughout the islands here in the summertime, and now they're starting to kind of tighten up their location. And we've got a kind of an idea of some of the places we want to look for these fish, and so we're just going to kind of poke around and try to find concentrations of fish as they are tightening up and moving into their wintering areas.
To illustrate this process of doing the same float over and over again throughout the months leading into winter, I've done a couple illustrations here. And starting with August here, you can see how these little dots represent where the fish are, and you can see how they're fairly evenly spread throughout this river system. This one has a very dominant ledge system here, and currents going this way, and they're up in this push water type area. As we move into late September, early October, they're still fairly evenly spread throughout, but what you get are these groupings, this wolf packing behavior where they group up and really start taking advantage of the forage situation in places like dying grass beds. But overall, still fairly evenly spread throughout the river. Once you move into late October, early November, you really start to see these loose aggregations around what will eventually become the winter holes. And in between, there are these big areas void of fish. I mean, you still may find a couple fish in there, but it's as you float through and you start catching them here and here, and then you go through another section and catch nothing, and then catch a bunch more, you start to develop an idea of where these winter pools are going to show up. Then here in early December, you really need to make a beeline for those spots and really pound them. That aggregation is starting to tighten around the deeper water upstream from this this dominant ledge system, and then the shallow water in between that has a lot of current. There's not a whole lot. You want to make a beeline for that next one. This one in particular is about a 9-foot deep hole, and they're spread throughout that, but that aggregation is starting to tighten up. And really what they're going to tighten up on are the spots within these pools that are current protected. And once you get into January and February, you really find out where those spots within the spots are in terms of current protection. In winter, we generally have a higher flow, and that'll push a lot of the fish to the bank. Especially when the river comes up, they need that high water refuge. And here I've illustrated it's a little notch in this island where in high water it'll flow through there very slowly, but they got a little notch in that bank that they tuck up into. You have this submerged ledge here, and that deflects the current away. Same thing over here. Got a couple fish here tucked up against this steep bank, and here's another submerged ledge that kind of kicks it out away from that bank. And right over here you have a creek mouth with a little scrub island. You got a fish tucked in there as well. So it's really about current protection as much as anything, not just depth. Part of this process of narrowing down your winter spots as you do the same float through the fall months is that you just paddle in between the spots. You put the rods down and you commit to not wasting any time until you get to those spots where you've seen the aggregations of fish. It takes a lot of discipline, but your benefit from it is having more time on the spots where you know that they are clustering up. That's a good one. That confirms something of this spot. Stay away from walking on it. That's a good one. Ha ha. Ah, fishy. Hi. Did I wake you up? Good for one fish in the winter. There's nothing really out here to deflect the current other than a little bit of depth. Yeah, he's a pretty one. But that's enough. That's all you need sometimes. There'll be ledges that come up and then drop down, and they tuck down in the bottom of that ledge, and that's enough of a current deflection. So, yeah, 19.5 incher. One fish alone doesn't confirm a great winter pool. Catch a mess of them in November while they're still active, then you're on to a great winter spot. Here are a few common characteristics of likely locations.
So Juan, this bank here is kind of a traditional small river wintering hole. I really like steep banks, absolutely love them, because I feel that the transition to the steep bank files itself right into the water. So you got an area where if the river comes up, the fish are going to be protected because they have that steep bank, and there's just a little bit of a pop out here. It's not as pronounced as some, but I really like the steep banks. I really do.
Chris, do you find that sometimes you'll see the fish that they're lined up, or you feel that the fish are lined up on a certain depth off that bank too, just kind of almost in a straight line?
You almost nose to tail.
Yeah, exactly, because you'll kind of walk it down over there, you hit that like 3 feet, and boom, right there's your bite, and you're kind of going down the river, and as you go down the river, that 3 foot is almost like the magic, depth.
People are always asking, how deep is a wintering hole? And there really isn't one answer. I mean, I think it's somewhere between 4 and 12 foot of water, and that's kind of where we are right now. We're in that, the boat's sitting at about 8 to 10 foot of water, and we're casting to 3 or 4 foot, dragging it out. All right, Jack.
Oh yeah, he's good. This is a neat area because it offers places at all river levels that are current protected. When it's really high, they get up in this log jumble here where all that trash and all the the driftwood is. When we were out a week ago, it wasn't really that high, but they were in here. And then today, where it's 1.5 foot lower, a lot less current, they're out there, and there's a nice deep trench that moves out into the middle of the river. So as the river comes up, those fish are going to pull out of that trench into this eddy water, and then if it gets really high, they'll get up into that stuff. And that's really something that's critical for a good winter spot. Current protection at any river level. On smaller rivers like this, really this is just a big creek. The winter holes are really the same places that the bigger fish anyways go in the middle of summer, in the middle of a drought. You can learn a lot about winter holes on small water like this by I'd say doing a float trip, but usually you're wading through a lot of this, dragging and floating, and the places that they collect where they have their bigger areas of deeper water in the middle of summer that afford them enough room to move around, and the larger pools that allow them to a larger hunting range to eat and to feed from, whether it's bluegill, crayfish, sculpin, whatever. Those are the same deep pools that they go back to in winter.